Hey everybody, we're back today with another top 10 album list. We're going to focus on the year 1971, being that it's the 50th anniversary of the albums released that particular year. This was an idea that Steve had had talked about for a few months now, and we finally got around to doing it. I am here with Steve and Gary, physical format rock and roll. Glad to be back working with him after a few months absence. Always
Very
good to
much.
get together with these guys and talk about music and talk about the albums that we love. So we're going to do a top 10. Like I said, we're going to go count them down 10 through one at a time around the block. It's going to be an order of Steve, Gary, and myself. Steve, you're going to kick it off with your number 10.
All right. Before we get to that, I had forgotten that I even had this book, but I recommend this book to anybody. It's Never a Dull Moment, 1971. And it's the year that rock exploded. And that is a perfect description because this year may be the toughest year to rank. And actually, this author, he's from London, so he's got a little different perspective than us from America, but he writes about a lot of the same albums that we're going to end up mentioning here. And each chapter, you got like May is Brown Sugar, June is Won't Get Fooled Again, July is Every Picture Tells a Story, and everything. But I would tell you to get this book. It's by a guy named David Hepworth, 1971. It's a great book.
Looks great.
So, okay. Are we doing any honorable mentions?
We can do them after we finish. I don't want to take off our hand.
All right. Okay. So number 10 for me, and this album's so important. It's on my wall, and that is T-Rex Electric Warrior. And I can't believe this song is 10th, but I mean, if this album is 10th, it tells you how strong this year is. I was lucky enough. I got to see him one time live. That was in '74. He was the headliner. Kiss and UFO opened up for him. He did not want to come out because it was a long delay between acts. He did not want to come out because I think he felt Kiss blew him off the stage. And this was before Kiss really had all the big, stage show.
Yeah.
But anyway, so this album, it's just a fantastic album. Tony Visconti, he produced a lot of Bowie stuff. He was kind of directing Mark Bolan at this time. I mean, there's 11 songs on here. Everybody knows Bang a Gong, Get It On. But to me, as great as that song is, the strength is in the deep cuts here. Just a fantastic album and band. And this was them at their peak, which I've noticed for most of these albums I've picked for 71, these 10, it's pretty much what I think is the artist at their peak too for their career.
Yeah.
So that is number 10.
Good one. That's actually in my honorable mentions. I have it sitting right here with me. And one of the things I tried to do when I make my list, I'm not going to hold Gary up, but I wanted to have a physical copy of it. I want it to be in my collection, not just mention it, but actually own it and prove that it's very important to me. I'm sorry, Gary, it's your turn.
No, that's fine. It's a round table discussion. Yeah. First off, those are when Steve makes those statements. I saw T-Rex and Kiss and UFO opened up the show. You kind of just want to punch him.
Yeah,
says things
through.
Like
Bang.
Yeah, I mean, gosh, to see Kiss at that point or UFO, fantastic. But this is, like we're all going to say, this was an extremely hard list to make. And I always kind of try to put a few different rules in for myself. Anytime I do these lists, just so I can make it a little easier. And what you said, Rich, is if I don't have a physical copy of it, I'm not gonna pick it. So right away, that got rid of a few of them. And I was going to do just only if I had it on vinyl. And I had my 10 made because that cut it down even more. Yeah. But then there was one album I'm like, I only have it on CD and cassette right now, and I'm like, it's got to be in my list. But anyway,
good one.
So that kind of shit helps me cut stuff down, make it a little easier for myself. So my number 10 is Jeff Beck Group, Rough and Ready. I love this album. I love the fact that this is when Jeff Beck starts getting a little more funky on here. It's got a combination of, instrumental music and vocal music. And it's got, what's this guy's name? Bob Tench on vocals.
Mhm.
I like his voice. Some of these songs on here just seem really rough and rocking, funky kind of songs. And Jeff's guitar, Jeff Beck is, if not one of my all-time favorite guitar players. And Cozy Powell is on drums on here, very young Cozy. So that makes this album that much more exciting for me. And I went back and forth, and you can see I've got this nice beat up copy here, but I had to put this one at number 10. Jeff Beck Group, Rough and Ready.
Very good. And I agree with you about it. I wanted to have everything on vinyl too, and I had the same exact problem. 9 of my 10 I have on vinyl. There was that one elusive one I haven't pulled the plug on yet. That's going to come up later. I think it's number 5. But anyway, I think what we're going to find here is we're going to play to our strong suit. I'm going to have a lot of classic rock and singer-songwriter, which is the stuff I listen to. I think Gary's going to have more of the hard rock and still classic rock. And Steve is more of a prog guy from what I can gather, and he's going to have a lot of that and adventurous kind of music, stuff that's a little bit avant-garde. I wouldn't say that glam rock is avant-garde, but it's different, and that album he chose is the prototype for that.
I think you're gonna be surprised at my picks, though. But
yeah, well,
you are right. But you are correct. I like a lot of prog.
Yeah. Anyway, my number 10. I don't want to delay it any further. This is almost a cheat because this album was released December 29th of 71, 3 days before the end of the year. It had most of its success in 72. It's the debut album by America.
Oh, love that album.
This is a fantastic album. It's acoustically based for the most part. America, for those out there, sort of a poor man's Crosby, Stills, and Nash, if you will. These guys that were living in England at the time, that they were military brats. Their parents were stationed in London. They formed a band over there in high school, and they called themselves America because they were all U.S. kids born in the United States that just happened to be living over there. They come back. This is their first album. It had a big #1 hit in A Horse with No Name. It's got a hard rocking song called Sandman, a ballad, I Need You, and all the way through. It's just fantastic. The instrumentation is very good on here for these 3 guys, and I really enjoy this. This kicked off their career. Their second album was good too, and then they sort of went more of a pop-oriented stuff, and they lost their appeal within the next 5 years. But this is an outstanding album, and I wanted to give it its props. Number 10.
That's a cool choice.
Yeah, I love that album. That's a great album. It's on my short list, but did not crack my top 10.
Okay.
All right, number 9. Once again, I can't believe this has fallen this low. Alice Cooper, Love It to Death. Now, man, so so I'm born in, June of 56, 1971, say New Year's Day. I'm 14 and a half years old. So when this came out, and this came out in early 71, I can remember the record store I went to and coming across this album cover. I was like, whoa, I got to buy this. So bought it and got it home. And man, I have played the hell out of this album. Even now, 50 years later, this is on heavy rotation in my house. This was a big change in sound for them. Their first 2 albums, they were really more kind of a garage rock kind of psych band. Those first 2 albums I don't like a lot, but the big thing was them getting Bob Ezrin as a producer, because he also co-wrote a number of the songs that really changed their sound. So that is number 9 for me.
Very good.
Awesome pick. So the next one here, my number 9, I don't know. I thought maybe it'll show up on Steve's, but I've got Uriah Heep, Look at
Great
Yourself.
album.
I love the way this thing starts off with the title track, man. That's a rocking number.
Oh yeah, that
and it
Hammond
goes on
organ.
for- Yeah, it goes on for a little, and that's the key word that you just said is the organ on this album. It's kind of like a Deep Purple kind of vibe that they had. I don't really normally I'm not a big keyboard guy in rock. I'm getting more so the older I get, and I think it's because of bands like this. The keyboard, the way they use it with that organ, and the way Deep Purple did, where it's just has such a heavy sound to it, and it just fills it out, man. And that's the way this album just rocks. And it's got, what's great about Uriah Heep is they're hard rocking, but they've got that kind of hippie psychedelic edge to them that shows up in their songs. Like it goes from really heavy, then it goes in I Want to Be Free, which is more, kind of the hippy dippy sound a little bit. And I love that about Uriah Heep. And, I'll be honest, this is a band that I have gotten into because of the vinyl community. Like when I was a kid, I had no idea who Uriah Heep was. So I did not grow up with these guys.
Yeah, they were done.
Yeah, I went back and gone through the bins and been finding Uriah Heep albums, and I love this band. So I was going through and finding records that came out that year, and when I saw this one came out in '71, I'm like, holy shit! There you go, man. That's gonna be my top 10. So number 9, Look at Yourself.
Yeah, and you got a good copy with
the
mirror. The mirror. Yep. Yeah, you got a good copy there.
Very good. My number 9 is one of these singer-songwriter, sort of a country folk guy, debut album, John Prine.
I knew that was going to be on your list.
It had to be. I couldn't leave him off.
Yep.
This album, to me, it's got 13 songs. I love every song on the album. He's talking about his own life, middle America. He mixes humanity and humor in his lyrics, which I really enjoy. All of a sudden it seems serious and he'll throw a little one-liner in there with a twist or something. And I just like his songwriting style. I didn't discover this guy until maybe 15 years ago. I did not grow up with this album either. I had always wondered what John Prine's music was, and I bought the CD and listened to it, and I was hooked on this album for like a month straight. That's all I'd listened to. And then when I got a chance to get it on vinyl, I jumped on that. But I really enjoy his songwriting style. He's talking about growing up, and his father was a coal miner, and there's songs about drug addiction and smoking pot, the hippie thing, and loneliness, isolation, just regular people living their lives. And so honest and to the point that it's really right up my alley. So I had to put him on the list.
Yeah, he's a Chicago guy, so I've heard him for 50 years.
Yeah.
Very good.
Cool. Nice.
All right, that's me, number 8.
Number 8.
Once again, man, can't believe how far down low this is, but Rod Stewart, every picture tells a story. Once again, I think it's this artist's peak. Man, he's got a great band here. He's got Ronnie Wood with him, who's, the Faces are still an ongoing concern at this point. I mean, the Faces this year also released a Not As Good as a Wink to a Blind Horse, with Stay With Me on it. So, I mean, I don't think Rod Stewart gets enough credit for his songwriting. I mean, yes, he's obviously a great vocalist, but does a great cover version of I Know I'm Losing You by, Rare Earth and
Temptation.
Yeah. So, yeah, it's just a fantastic album. So, and I always love this album cover for a non-photograph for what's basically an illustration. I love this cover.
Yeah, that's a really strong album. You're picking my honorable mentions. The T-Rex album's in my honorable mentions, and so is Rod. Good job. I like that. Can't say anything bad about it. Great album. And it is peak Rod, for sure.
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah. There's like definitely, you got the Rod Stewart with Jeff Beck group, and then the early solo stuff and the face, that's
Yeah,
Rod
that's it.
Stewart everybody loves. I mean, not that he didn't have some great songs after that, but it was just never the same.
Right.
Luckily, I don't own that album, so I didn't have to worry about
Well,
putting
It's a
that
good
in.
one.
So,
You should get it.
I know.
Yeah,
I will.
that is an essential in your collection.
I know. I got all kinds of essentials I need. I just don't have the money to get them.
I hear you.
Okay, here, kind of like what you're saying. This year is just so doggone good. As low as I'm ranking some of these albums, I mean, this is one of my, all-time favorite bands. But I've got Metal by Pink Floyd showing up here. It starts off with One of These Days, and it just goes from there. Starts off with that scary sounding wind and that, that bass with the effect. Then it just keeps building, and David Gilmour's got that great slide guitar in there. I mean, it's just an instrumental except for the one line in there.
Right.
But I also feel like I realized after this they had obscured by clouds, but this is what leads to Dark Side of the Moon. This is
Most
where Pink
definitely.
Floyd,
Yep.
they find their footing here, and they become, not that, well, I mean, side two is Echoes. So I don't want to say they became too focused, but at the same time, they're becoming more focused. Their songwriting is becoming more concise, and there's definitely more of a direction that is here with Metal. And not that I love that earlier Pink Floyd stuff too.
Yeah. But
this is definitely a step up to their game. And coming in at number 7, Metal by Pink Floyd.
Yeah, you say they found their sound, and I think that's because it's the first album really where Gilmour gets to shine.
Yeah.
I think I kind of feel like they're all really coming together on these albums where, eventually they implode, but they're still a team here.
Yeah. Here's an album that I don't think Steve did this with. He's not a fan of this group, but Gary and I did a top 10 on The Doors, LA Woman.
Yeah.
You are correct, sir.
Thank you. I have a good memory when it comes to that stuff. And
Sorry if I rubbed you the wrong way.
No, not at all. This is a great one. I mean, the last studio album with Jim Morrison, of course. I love there's 3 standout songs. I mean, you could argue every song's great. It ended up, then they are, but I love Love Her Madly, of course, and the title track, LA Woman. I mean, it's all over the place, but it's fantastic. And I love Riders on the Storm. That's probably my favorite Doors tune. The mood of that with the piano and the thunder and the killer on the loose and his brain is squirming like a I like the lyrics. It's a masterpiece of songwriting and great stuff. Blues rock, like I said, it's got it all.
I agree with everything you're saying, and it might show up again.
There you go. I had a feeling it might. We have some common ground. We're not completely coming from different places. Yeah, I had to include it, so it made it at number 8.
All right. I don't know how an album with songs like Lord of this World, Children of the Grave, Sweet Leaf, After Forever, Into the Void falls to number 7. But Black Sabbath, Master of the Reality. I mean, this was the template for stoner rock, and nobody has surpassed it since.
Nope.
I don't know if I could say it's them at their peak, but man, it's certainly in the team photo. It's just they're just. I mean, this stretch here. For me, the 3, 4, and 5, Master Reality Volume 4 and Sabbath Bloody Sabbath, to me, that's them at their peak. But yeah, this is just another one of those great albums that I can't believe it's sunk this low. Although I don't know if you can say sunk that low. I mean, it's number 7 out of a bumper crop. So, but
Pretty
there you go.
strong,
That's
yeah.
my number
strong
7.
showing. Anything that makes the
Yeah.
top 10 is a masterpiece as far as
Oh
I'm concerned.
yes, yeah.
Oh yeah. That's what I had to tell myself
Yeah.
in this ranking too,
Yeah.
because I'm like, holy shit, this album is, whatever
Yeah.
number it is. I love
Yes,
this album.
I'm not doing it any disservice when I look at the ones that are ahead of it. So
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah.
All right.
All right. My next pick is kind of like my pick of Pink Floyd's Metal. This is definitely, I think, where this band found their sound. Aqualung, Jethro Tull. This is a great album. I don't even know how you classify it in a way. I mean, it's classic rock. It's got those folk elements to it that are so weird that Jethro Tull does such a fantastic job. But Cross-Eyed Mary,
Love it.
Aqualung, Locomotive Breath. I mean, this is almost like a greatest hits of Jethro Tull.
And you got the Steven Wilson remix, right?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah.
I had my old copy. I gave to my son once I bought this remix, and yeah, it's just boom, pops out at you.
Yes, it's
And I love it. This is such a unique album. 1971, such a great, unique year. I mean, just look at the albums we've shown so far, and how different they are. And here's another one, man. This doesn't sound like anything else that we've talked about, and it's great. And I'm sure we probably all like this album. So, and it's fallen up. What is this? 7, I think. Yeah,
number 7. Yep,
number 7.
I think it might show up on all of our lists. That's my prediction.
Yeah,
I could be wrong.
we'll see.
yeah.
I think I'm tipping my hand, but
Yeah, you're killing the surprise, man.
my number 7, I'm going back to the mellow stuff. I can't. There you go. Teaser and a Fire Cat. My favorite Cat Stevens album. I like Tea for the Tillerman too, but I like this a little better. This was what's that?
That's my favorite of his too. Yep.
Yeah, this is my introduction to the singer-songwriter genre, so to speak. This is an album that I've owned since 71. So this is a 50-year-old album right here. Love
Awesome.
it. Laid back, the thoughtful lyrics. And you got Rick Wakeman appearing on here on Morning Is Broken too. He does the keyboards. So great.
That's cool.
stuff.
I never knew that.
Oh yeah. And every song on here. I mean, it had some hits. Morning Is Broken, Moonshadow, Peace Train were all over the radio, but the deeper cuts are good as well. Really, really strong. I think there was a children's book written on called Teaser and the Fire Cat as well. He does his own illustrations. There's the back cover with the shoes, and then the front with the teaser and the Fire Cat. Just fantastic. Had to be on my list, and it worked its way up to number 7.
Yeah, Bitter Blue is on that too, right?
Bitter Blue, another great one.
That's my favorite song on that album, I think.
I like it too. Good one.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw they released a deluxe 50-year anniversary for that.
I did not see that. No.
So
Well,
that means it has 3 records of outtakes.
Yeah.
So you can get 10 versions of each song.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Does it have any
It's,
new songs, or is it just like Gary said, a remix?
No, I believe there are some songs, and I think it comes with a video, and
Yeah.
but it's pricey. It's $300.
No, I'm not going there.
Yeah,
I don't
Yeah,
love
I
it
know,
that
this-
much.
This
Yeah.
shit's crazy. That day.
yeah,
Yeah,
I know.
I can't go there.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so
Number 6.
number 6, the last of the bottom half.
Yep.
Same one that Gary just showed.
Whoa, I knew
Yeah.
that would show up. Yep.
And it's the Steven Wilson remix also. But I mean, I love this album so much. I bought the UHQR of this,
Oh, wow.
And as fantastic as this UHQR sound is, I don't know if it's better than the Steven Wilson remix. I tell anybody, if you come across an album that Steven Wilson has put his hands on as far as doing the remixing or producing, buy it, because sonically it's going to be fantastic. You will not be disappointed. Just a question of how much you like the music. So yeah, Gary, I think you nailed it. I mean, it was an album in '71 that it sounded like nobody else.
Yeah.
And it's also another one of those albums. Well, all these albums. It's true. I play all these albums like crazy to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, this is it. That it is such a strong year that that's what I do. I mean, I just play these albums like crazy. So yes, Jethro Tull, Aqualung #6.
Guess what? Back to backers. Aqualung, #6.
That's our first unanimous decision.
Yeah, you guys have really talked about it enough, but I like the combination of the blues, the folk, the psych, the hard rock. It's got every element in it, and the flute running through it by Ian Anderson. Martin Barr on guitar. I mean, underrated guitar player as far as I'm concerned. Just an amazing album. And,
although I think in your excitement, Rich, to join on the train, I think you jumped over Gary, right?
Yeah.
Oh, I'm sorry. I was very excited. We'll go back to Gary.
That's okay.
Can't believe I've done that. That was wild.
Well, the funny thing is, so, you got excited. You wanted to show an album that had already been shown. My #6.
There you go.
There we go.
This is the one I couldn't leave off. I don't have this sucker on vinyl yet.
Yeah.
Like I said, just CD and cassette. But I've had this for a really long time. As you can see, it's got crap all over that case. But yeah, I love this album. And it's kind of one of those things where I don't know that necessarily when I first heard this album many, many years ago that I was in love with it right away. It kind of took me a little bit to get into it. Jim's voice is definitely on the decline here. It's a lot more rough, but it suits this album perfectly. I love the way he sounds on this album now. And like you said, Riders on the Storm is, my wife hates that song, but I love it. Well, she thinks it's, she's like, it's so boring, and I'm like, no, it's menacing and it's cool.
It is cool.
I love it. And I love pretty much every song.
Yeah, every song.
Crawling King Snake, all that stuff. This is just a smorgasbord of different styles by the Doors, and I love it. So that's my #6 pick, LA Woman.
Very good.
Mr. Mojo Rising.
Right, that anagram was Jim Morrison. I always like that little twist there. Awesome.
Yeah, it's cool.
Top 5.
All right. I was surprised, I guess, that I had this high. I knew pretty much right away when I was doing this what my top 10 were going to be. Just a question of how they fell. But when I did the final 10 ranking, I went from what I thought was the worst, the worst of the best. So I started with 10 instead of trying to pick out #1. And my #5 is Badfinger, Straight Up.
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah. Once again, it's another band at their peak. Everybody knows the sad story. Tom Evans, Pete Ham, they both end up killing themselves, hanging themselves, same way even. But this was an album that had kind of a troubled production because George Harrison started it first, and they brought in Todd Rundgren to finish it up. So I don't know if I'd say the production is great on this, but the songwriting, it's what is it? I think there's 12 songs on this album. There's not a weak song on this track. The follow-up to this was an album called Ass, and on the album cover they have a picture of a donkey going after the carrot, which is the record company. And they felt like asses for following along. But if you want to hear a band at their peak, it's definitely this album. So Badfinger straight up.
Wow.
I'm glad,
Yeah,
I'm glad
that's
somebody had that. That's a good one.
it is. That's another one I want to get on vinyl.
Yeah,
but I
me
don't
too.
have it.
I don't have it.
It's hard to find in the wild.
It is. You're right.
At least a good copy of it is hard to find.
Yeah. Okay. My number 5 is just a great album, man, and that's Sticky Fingers by the Rolling Stones, complete with the zipper that works. I mean, we're all pretty familiar with this album, but this is during that stretch there, the Stones, where everything they were putting down was magic, and this is just right in there. It's not my favorite album during that era, but I definitely love it. And it does have one of my favorite Stone songs on here, which is Moonlight Mile. That's just one of those magical songs to me, where they just seem to hit their stride. So this has got, blues rock, hard rock, got a little bit of jazz in there. It's got some folk, got humor.
Yep.
Dead Flowers. That's a hilarious song, but it's great. It's hard not to sing along with that. So that's my number 5 pick, Sticky Fingers.
All right, I'm about to get excited again. I have it at number 5 also.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, pretty much all the reasons you gave. I think it's the Stones' best album. It's vintage Stones for me, and it comes in that middle of that 4-album run from Beggar's Banquet to Let It Bleed, Sticky Fingers, and of course Exile on Main Street. I mean, hard pressed to come up with 4 back-to-back albums that are that quality.
Yeah.
In
All
the history of
all
music.
4 just great albums.
All 4. You can pick any one of those 4 as your top Stones album. They'd all be justified.
And I don't know if you're like me or not, but like at times that was my favorite out of those 4 albums. I just, for a couple of years it'll be this one, another couple of years it'll be that one. So
yeah, that happens. But just listen to the list of songs from Brown Sugar, Wild Horses, Can't You Hear Me Knocking, Bitch, Dead Flowers, which sort of a country rockish kind of, and then it ends with Moonlight Mile. I mean, one of the Stones' best albums, wall to wall. And you got Mick Taylor in peak form as well. He's my favorite guitarist of the Stones.
It's a great sounding record too, I think.
Yeah.
I'm right there with you with Mick Taylor, because once Mick Taylor left, their quality dropped off.
Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah.
That was it. Number 5.
All right, very good. Number 4. Once again, an artist at their peak. I even have the album cover on the wall, and that's Paul McCartney Ram.
Wow, nice.
Did not see that coming.
It is my favorite McCartney album by far. I know most people think Band on the Run is him at his peak, but this album just reminds me of summer 1971.
Yeah.
Not driving yet, so I'm riding around on my bike, had a transistor radio strapped to my handlebars, and you'd hear Uncle Albert every hour on the hour pretty much.
Absolutely.
I mean, this is when he tried to be pretty sly and circumnavigate having to pay full royalties. So this is the only album that's credited to Paul and Linda McCartney. And then they came down on him and said, no, you can't do that because we know she's not writing the songs. So, but yeah, because he was still beholden to Apple at this point. So, and Linda wasn't. So yeah, just a fantastic album. Not a weak song on the album. I love Smile Away. That's probably my favorite song on the album. So yeah, and it's a great sounding album too. A great production on this album. And my second favorite Beatles solo album, definitely All Things Must Pass, would be number 1.
I agree with that.
So there you go.
That's strong. Uncle Albert, so I would have been like 6 when that came out. And those early songs like that and Band on the Run, things like that, I mean, they are so ingrained into hearing them on the radio when I was a little kid and growing up, and I still love them.
Yeah.
It's like I've never gotten tired of those songs. And it's like, now I had such a nostalgic feel for those songs at the same time, just appreciating them for being great songs. They just never surpassed that era. But,
oh wait, and for a second, if we were in court, I'd be calling for a sidebar because Rich just did a Stones. Yeah, well, you guys both came off doing Stones album, and I did McCartney. You've heard of this war words McCartney and Jagger have going on now?
Now?
Yeah, right
No.
now. Yeah, McCartney just the other day said, well, they were basically, a blues cover band. Okay, so yeah, so the Stones were playing, I think, last night in LA. So there were a lot of celebrities there. And so Mick points out, he says, oh yeah, he says, Megan Fox is here and Lady Gaga, and I forget who else he mentions. And he says, if only Paul McCartney were here, he could come up and join us in a blues tune.
Wow.
Yeah.
Back and forth.
Those guys definitely had a
Why?
little competitiveness there, I guess.
Yeah.
I mean, I remember, now here we go off on the tangent, but there before John Lennon had passed away, and he was it wasn't that long before he died. He had some interview where he was talking about Mick Jagger, and he's basically saying, yeah, he's like, he has to have this gang with him. He's talking about the Rolling Stones. He's afraid to go out on his own. He's got to be surrounded by his little gang that he's had and everything. And I'm like, I mean, to me, that's sour grapes. Just because you couldn't keep the Beatles together and the Stones were still together, it's like, what a shitty statement. But
yeah. I hate that stuff. I hate that.
Yeah, that was obviously jealousy there talking. But
yeah.
Okay, let's see.
All right, Gary.
My number 4 and my number 3, man, I tell you what, I just, the nerd in me has just went back and forth. I decide, like it really freaking matters. But, like anybody cares. But I don't know. I guess this will be my number 4. I've had it at number 3, but I'm changing it. It's already been shown. Black Sabbath, Master of Reality. This is such a great album in my mind. Like you said, here's the origin of stoner rock, and nobody has surpassed it. Black Sabbath were, the band that kind of put the black in in rock and roll, the dark side of it. But it's got Sweet Leaf and Children of the Grave is on this album, and I know those have been played to death, but man, those are still a couple of my favorite Black Sabbath songs, especially Children of the Grave. I love that song, man. And that's like kind of like you can just hear bands like Iron Maiden going, oh, what's that? Let's create it. Let's create a sound that kind of mimics that. And, this is when, obviously they were already heavy into the drugs, but it hadn't overtaken them yet. And they were just making some fantastic doom, gloom kind of songs. And this is before they started to get a little more progressive or whatever. They were still in their early stage here. And I don't know. Steve's already talked about it quite a bit. I can't really add too much more to it, except it is also embossed. The letters, so that moves it up there. I love that album cover. It's so simple.
It's so simple, yes.
This is how they write Black Sabbath now. That's their trademark, on how they do it. Just a great album.
Yeah, when I was in a band, we used to play Children of the Grave, and I asked to play it. The bass in that song is, you're the star. You're the star of that song if you're the bass player.
Yes.
All right. Sure. Very nice. My number 4, I'm going off the grid a little bit here, getting away from the rock. I've got Marvin Gaye, What's Going On?
Good album.
I just think this is an important album for the time.
Yeah.
Just brilliant. Everything that the Black experience was about, or that people were living through, shows up here in the songwriting. And you've got poverty and unemployment, racism, police brutality. The Vietnam War was still going on. That's reflected in here. All the issues that were going on in the inner city. And Marvin Gaye, this is like an absolute masterpiece of an album, and I couldn't leave it off. I don't own it on vinyl, obviously. This is the one that I had to squeeze in, and I have to get a vinyl copy of that if I can. So, Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, number 4.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm glad you put that in there.
Yeah, it's a solid album.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, and we're down to the top 3.
Top 3. Well, on a previous video that we did, we covered this album because so many songs from it were selected. That is Led Zeppelin 4.
Yeah.
It could have been number 1.
Easily.
Yeah.
It could have been number 10 too. But I mean, once again, to me, it is a band at their peak. I mean, not a weak song on the track, you know, the behemoth that is Stairway to Heaven. If people didn't know who Led Zeppelin were before this album, they knew it from then on.
Yeah.
You know, yeah, When the Levee Breaks, I think that may have even been my favorite song that I chose for top 10 Led Zeppelin songs. I mean, I think John Bonham's the star of this album. And that's saying a lot considering the musicians he's playing with.
Yeah.
But I'm quite sure I am not going to be the only person to pick this album.
I just want to do a plug. When the 3 of us did Led Zeppelin, anybody that hasn't seen it, go back and check it out because it's a great video. We had a great time making that.
It's must-see TV, Rich.
Must see.
Yes.
Self-promotion. Go check it out.
Please. Well, nobody's going to argue with that pick. I don't think anybody's going to argue with this being in the top 3 either. Who's next?
Yep.
By the Who.
Absolutely.
I mean, you know, we've talked about this quite a bit too.
Yep.
When we did our top 10 songs, there were definitely songs off of here.
A lot of them, yeah.
This is basically a greatest hits album, but yet it all came out on one studio album. This is the band at their peak. Got that great album cover. Also, I love the whole who's next? You know,
Yeah,
right.
The next album by the Who.
It's an iconic cover.
Who's next that we're gonna piss on? I mean, you know, it's great. It's such a great album title that they reference it later on in You Better You Bet. And I don't even know where to begin on this album. We all know it so well. The deep cuts are hits on this album too. I mean, everybody knows songs like My Wife or Going Mobile, and those are kind of like the deep cuts, but they still get radio airplay. Sure. That's just how good this album is. And of course, Won't Get Fooled Again, Bob O'Reilly. I mean,
epic. Yeah.
What to say? This is magic. This is magic right here.
Yeah,
definitely.
I agree. All right, my number 3, we're going to tone it down a bit. This is my favorite singer-songwriter album of 71 and pretty much the early 70s. I'm going Joni Mitchell, Blue.
Yeah, I figured that'd show up.
I have to put this one on. This is a masterpiece. I love the personal, introspective lyrics. Just talking about her relationships, coming off the breakup of Graham Nash. Now she's involved with James Taylor. All that stuff is in this particular album. Breaking up, falling in love with a new guy. She writes beautifully about it. Very confessional, heartfelt, just pure and honest. And I think it's one of the great albums of the 70s. So I had to put it at number 3. I have 2 that I like that you guys have already shown that are higher on my list. And I like my order. So I'm going to keep it at number 3. Joni Mitchell, Blue.
Hold that album, Rich. Yeah, look that cover, man. That's an iconic cover, man. I love that. So that type of thing where you can take a simple picture like that, shade it a
Yeah.
little bit. That's fantastic, man. I love that.
I love
album
the
cover.
lyrics on the inside too. You can follow
Yeah.
along and really get into this. This
Well, that's the
album.
type of artist you want to go along with the lyrics.
Yeah. I like her guitar playing too, and her singing. So there's more to it than the songwriting. She's well rounded.
All right. At number 2, Gary just showed it. Who's next? Got it hanging on my wall also. There's nothing I can say that hasn't been said. Gary just said it, and I'm quite sure Rich is going to talk about it. So that's my number 2. Who's next?
Yeah,
Great
it just goes to show this year that we picked, man, 1971. I mean, arguably, right, the greatest year in rock.
So important they wrote a book about it, Gary.
Yeah, that's right. We talked about that at the beginning, didn't we?
Yeah.
I bet they wrote more than one book. I'm guessing too. I don't know if they mentioned this next album in that book, but if they didn't, then they're pretty stupid. And that's Killer by Alice Cooper. Good Lord, what an album this is. Man, this is Alice Cooper. I mean, if Love It to Death was kind of like you talked about, how they got out of the whole, weird avant-garde hippie shit that they were doing. And then they got here and refined it and made a masterpiece of an album. The band sounds terrific. The lyrics are great. Just the songs hold up today, right? Alice is still doing songs off of this in concert, and everybody loves it. And it's got Halo of Flies is on this one, and I love that.
A rock and roll symphony.
Yes, that's them trying to say, hey, we're going to pretend we're King Crimson for a minute and extend our music, make it a little, because they were a garage band. And I think that song there, they just wanted to show their chops a little bit. Of course, they got Bob Ezrin helping them out, guiding them a little bit. But this, another album that's basically a greatest hits album. And this Alice Cooper becomes even more of a mysterious, dark, kind of sinister sounding group. And Alice finds even more of his voice himself. And that album cover is pretty darn cool too.
It is.
Even the way, it's got the snake and the way they write Alice Cooper Killer, like it's some crazy person. Who wrote that. Even like, that's creepy. The picture on the back. Look at these freaks.
Yeah.
Yep.
I love it. I love this album. I mean, it's my favorite Alice Cooper album. So it had to be that high up there. Number 2, Killer.
No arguments.
I have to get that because I don't have that, believe it or not. I'm almost ashamed to say I don't own it on CD or vinyl. I have the only Alice Cooper that I own in my collection are compilations, greatest hits packages.
Okay.
So I need to change that.
Yeah,
My
especially
number,
those are.
Yeah, especially that particular album looks intriguing, so I might have to get that. My number 2 is one that's been mentioned. I mean, what can you say about this? A monster. Led Zeppelin 4. I have to put it that high. A beast of an album. One of the high points of the 70s. I mean, for the Stairway alone, or Stairway to Heaven alone, I mean, that's so iconic. And every song on the album, all 8 of them are great. Black Dog, Rock and Roll, Battle of Evermore, Stairway, Misty Mountain Hop, love it. 4 Sticks, Going to California, and When the Levee Breaks. I mean, that is as good as it gets. Let's face it.
Yeah.
So, number 2 for me.
You are preaching to the choir.
Yes. All right. Well,
and the cream
go ahead,
rises to the top. And not only is 71 the best year, but to land in the top 1 or 2, what does that tell you? I mean, that's greatness.
Yeah.
Yes.
10 out of 10, baby.
Yep. All right, Steve. Number 1.
All right. There it is.
Oh, there it is.
Boom.
It's my favorite Alice Cooper album too, Gary.
Great.
Yeah. I mean, yes, Halo of Flies, a rock and roll symphony. I mean, this album, like you said, him playing live today, he plays half of this album still in his set list. To me, yeah, I mean, it's just a fantastic album. I used to have that because, it opened up with the calendar for 1971. I used to have that hanging in my bedroom. It was still hanging even in 1976, I mean, we were 5 years past. But my biggest thing with Alice Cooper is I wish he'd never broken up the original band. I don't know what I would have liked to have known what they would have sounded like in today's world, but I still think it's his biggest mistake artistically. Probably not financially for a while there. I don't. How do you think they brought back the original band? What kind of side stadium?
I don't know if it would affect things that much or not. I mean, I think there's going to be a handful of fans like you and I, hardcore Alice Cooper fans, that they're going to say, oh, I'm willing to pay the extra bucks if they want to do that, but I think when you go see Alice Cooper, not because I just saw him not that long ago, and it's a pretty wide range of ages that go see Alice Cooper. So there's a lot of people who are younger. I mean, myself, really. I mean, I appreciate it because I'm such a historian. But by the time I got into Alice Cooper, I mean, the original Alice Cooper band was already done. But I think there's a lot of younger people who probably wouldn't really care, either way. And I will say he does have a killer band right now. I mean,
he does, yeah.
Out of all the, I've been seeing Alice Cooper since 1986. I'm sorry, I didn't see him back in the 70s, but I've been seeing him since
you were a little child.
I've been seeing him since that point, and to me, this is the best band that he's had in all that time. Granted, I've never fortunate enough to see the original Alice Cooper band, but yeah, I would love to see that just for historical reference, to be able to see that, to say that I did. I mean, obviously you wouldn't get to see everybody, but
no,
it would be great. I don't know. Could they all hold up for a tour? I don't know.
Yeah.
You always have that. I mean, not everybody's like Alice.
No.
He's still out there he's just kicking ass in concert, I mean, of course, he doesn't have to move around fast. He's got that menacing walk that he does and everything, but he still sounds good. Puts on a great show. Yeah.
All right, so that's my number one. I know what Gary's is.
My number one, no shock. Everybody's talking about it here. Led Zeppelin 4. This even opens up with this cool looking thing here. How mysterious is that? That was a great thing. When I was young, the first Led Zeppelin album I bought was In Through the Outdoor. Because all the older kids, would talk about, oh, Led Zeppelin, man, they're the best. And they were already an older band in my mind. And so I got In Through the Outdoor because that was the album that had just came out. That was their new album. And I remember not being that thrilled with it. I didn't get it, why everybody said Led Zeppelin was so great. So, I waited around a year or so, I think. And so I got a year older, a little bit more mature, a little wiser. And then I went back and I picked up a copy of this, which is still the same copy that I got then. And then I'm like, oh, okay, now I get it. Now I get why people talk about Led Zeppelin. Of course, then I went back, got all the other stuff. But yeah, I fell in love with it. I think after listening to this, they became my favorite band. Basically because of this album. And I'm like, wow, these other bands that I love and still love, but I'm like, these guys are above that. There's something more going on here. The musicianship, the imagery, the mystery involved with this band, the drumming, like he said, the drumming on this album has got to be some of the best ever in rock. I mean, John Bonham is a beast, but lyrically, I love this album. There's nothing I don't love about this album. And as much as it's been played, Yeah, there's some songs on it that, maybe I can't always listen to, but this album just holds up so well, and I still love it. And, if I can keep away from it for a little while and go back and play this album in its entirety, I'm still like, this,
Yeah.
what a masterpiece. This
is.
album is and it sounds so amazing. That's the thing that blows me away, is this thing was recorded, and came out in 1971. And when you think of other albums that came out around the same time period, they sound like dog shit from a recording, standpoint than this album does. This album sounds great. I mean, it's like, I always think of like Kiss's first album came out in 1974.
Yeah.
And the sound of that, like compared to this that came out in 71, I'm like, why did their first couple albums sound so bad?
Yeah.
But there's a lot of bands that sounded bad musically, or, compared to Led Zeppelin, or just recording wise, I mean. Well, and musically. So.
Yeah. Other bands didn't have Jimmy Page producing them.
Yeah, exactly. The guy
Yeah.
was a genius, I tell you.
Yeah.
Yeah, and song wise, Rich already covered everything on here. I can't add any more to that. It's a greatest hits package.
Yep.
Yeah, it was close. I had a hard time between 2 and 1. I mean, easily could have went with Led Zeppelin. I think Led Zeppelin were the best band of the 70s, for sure, in my opinion. But I think this album is just a little bit higher on my list. I mean, I could waffle back and forth, but Who's Next? I love this album. I think it's quintessential Who. It's got those massive anthems, Baba O'Reilly and Won't Get Fooled Again. Behind Blue Eyes is a great song. Bargain, Getting in Tune, Going Mobile. I mean, the whole thing just rocks. And on a different day, in a different year, maybe it wouldn't be number 1, but today it is for me.
It's definitely too when Roger Daltrey stepped up with his voice.
Yeah.
Even more so. I mean, I feel like with Tommy, he was getting there, and then with this album, it's like also here's the rocking Roger Daltrey's voice. That's just like, his singing on that album is tremendous.
We talked about that scream before. Remember that scream that he?
Oh yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, that part of it too. But also it's like his singing, he became a man on that album somehow. His voice got bigger or something. You think of those early Who records, and then you compare them to like 5 years later with this album, with Who's Next, and it's like, holy cow, what did this guy go out and do? Did he make his deal with the devil like Robert Johnson and come back and all of a sudden, hey, look, now I'm one of the best singers in rock and roll?
Yeah, it's true. So that's great. That's number 1 for me. You guys had great lists, and they reflect our taste in music, which is what it's all about. So
we had three albums that all 3 of us picked. Who's Next, Led Zeppelin 4, and Aqualung.
There you go. And they're arguably the 3 of the best. I mean, come on.
Yeah.
And the rest of us all had some,
we had a
maybe
couple,
not all 3 of us had, but
yeah, you guys both had Black Sabbath. Gary and I both had the Doors. You guys had Alice Cooper as well. So there was a lot of common albums here. Let me just run through my honorable mentions quick, and then I'll give you guys a shot. I have a couple of the ones that Steve showed. I have the T-Rex album, Electric Warrior, honorable mention.
Yep.
Very, very close to getting on here. Same thing with Rod Stewart. Every Picture Tells a Story. That was a contender. And then I have some of my wimpy singer-songwriter stuff. Tapestry, Carole King.
yeah, how did that not make our top 10?
Didn't make it. I loved Van Morrison's album, Tupelo Honey. That was a runner-up for me. And of course, the great Elton John, Madman Across the Water.
Yeah,
Fantastic.
All of those albums were close.
Madman Across the Water, if the second side was as good as the first, it would have made my top 10.
I happen to agree with you.
That album is front loaded.
It is.
yeah.
There's no doubt. And a couple of the others that I didn't pull out that I can't believe nobody had. How about Yes, Fragile? What a great album that is.
It's on my honorable mention.
And John Lennon's Imagine. I have Paul McCartney Ram, Badfinger Straight Up. All of those were I have on CD, but I did not bring them out for the show. So what else you got, Steve?
I've got a laundry list here. That's why I say this was this was such, yeah, my if I go grocery shopping tomorrow, my list is going to be shorter.
Run through. What do you got? Let's hear it.
All right, ZZ Top's first album.
Oh yeah, I didn't even think
Got
of that.
the Yes album and Fragile, those two albums by them.
Yep.
Uriah Heep, Look at Yourself, which Gary had. Traffic,
Nice.
Low Spark of High Heeled Boys. 10 Years After, A Space and Time. Rory Gallagher's album Deuce. The Stones' Sticky Finger, which both of you picked. Pink Floyd Metal, Gary picked.
Yep.
Nilsson Schmilsson. I love that album.
That's a good one too.
Moody Blues, Every Good Boy Deserves Favor.
Mhm.
John Lennon Imagine. I still don't know how it didn't make my top 10, but Humble Pie, Rockin' the Fillmore. The only reason why I could have made it my top 10, but I told myself I'm not going to pick any live albums because live albums are kind of, it's almost an unfair comparison because a lot of times it's kind of like a greatest hits. So
Yeah.
I didn't want to pick it. Grand Funk, E Pluribus, which is my favorite Grand Funk album. Faces, A Not As Good As a Wink. Rich, You Showed Madman Across the Water. Deep Purple, Fireball. Rich, You Showed Tapestry. So that is it. That's a lot of albums that I'm going to listen to them all today.
How about you, Gary? Did you write any down?
Yeah, I've got like 5. You talked about a couple of them. Madman Across the Water, Tapestry, just terrific albums. Tapestry is once again a greatest hits album. All Day Music by War.
Yeah, that's a good one too.
That's a good one. I got a couple that I actually grabbed, and of course, we mentioned this. Yes, Fragile.
Yeah.
What gets me on this album is the bass playing.
Oh, Chris Squire is
God, so amazing, and the sound of it is great. I'm very surprised, Steve, that you didn't have Fragile in your top 10.
I was too. I thought that for
Yeah,
sure would be in there.
it could have been up number 11, but it would have been, even though I find probably the Yes album a more enjoyable listen, Fragile I like more of those two albums, and it's because of the songs Heart of the Sunrise and South Side of the Sky. Those songs, I mean, like you said, Gary, about Chris Squire. I mean, like how John Bonham, he is the sound of Led Zeppelin 4. Well, Chris Squire is the sound of that album.
Yeah. It's funny because I just went back and listened to that album the other night because I'm like, I was trying to decide for sure what exactly makes the top 10. And I'm like, nope, it's just going to miss it. I just like some of these other albums, I enjoy listening to them a little bit more. So
Yeah,
it was
same with me. If we had to do it in the top 20, it would have made it, but it was in my next level.
And then I also have Anticipation by Carly Simon.
Yeah.
I love this album, and I of course it's got the title track there, but I like the sound of this whole album. And I like side 2. This has there's a lot of echo and reverb on this album where it gives it almost a haunting quality. I mean,
who produces that?
You listen to this at night, like with headphones on or something, and it's just kind of, I don't know, it just kind of takes me away, kind of thing. And we were talking about who did we mention? We thought was Rod Stewart being underrated as a songwriter.
Yes.
I think Carly Simon's underrated.
I agree with you. She's got great songs.
Yeah, I love her voice. And this is the album too, where a lot of those drum breaks, the drums would be like, have these real big echoing sound on the toms. Dum, 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 dum. And then it would go into like a very soft, piano playing. And I don't know, it's just kind of a different album. And I never really realized it at first because all all I ever knew was Carly Simon's greatest hits. And then later on, I started getting some of the actual albums, and this one stands out. This is my favorite. So
Very good.
All right.
All right. Thanks, guys, for coming on. I'm going to do a wrap and appreciate both of you. Looking back at 1971, it was a great year and had a great time reminiscing, so to speak, and going over our
yes,
list.
great to be here.
All three of us had some killer albums, let's face it. So for Steve, Gary, Physical Format Rock and Roll, I'm Rich Strickler. We will see you next time. Be sure to leave some comments. Give us some albums that we may have overlooked. I doubt it, because we pretty thorough this time around. So
We got them all.
we will see you next time. Take care, everybody. Bye.